Beginning with Easter Sunday, we have been moving through a series on stewardship. Easter Sunday, we talked about the gift of Easter being this knowledge that God could take the worst events of our lives and make good things come of them if we let God. And the question was, will we let God? So that was about giving our hearts to God, because that's the foundation of all of the rest of our giving, is where our hearts are, there our treasure will be. So that was Easter Sunday. Then last week, we talked about time and how time is sacred. It's so easy for us to get busy. It's easy for us to get busy and just the time flies by and we don't do the things we want to do. We're not spending time with the people we want to be with. We're not living. Oftentimes we just are rolling through the days. Get up, go to work. And we didn't talk about that to shame anybody, but to remind ourselves, to pause and remind ourselves that our time is sacred. It is a gift that we're given 1 second, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day. And we are invited to unwrap it consciously, mindfully, knowing that as we have given our hearts to God, so God can show us how to use our time more efficiently, more effectively. And so that's what we talked about last week, how and where in people's lives they were being called to be more mindful of their time. Today we're talking about talents, and we're talking about talents as in the gifts that are given. And in the two passages we heard today, and they're not the only two passages on spiritual gifts, we hear about specific certain sets of gifts. But I want to go back to what I said earlier about spiritual, because spiritual has to do with the parts of us that we can't see. When I worked at a hospital as a spiritual care person, I was not just dealing with people's faith. I was dealing with their grieving, and I was dealing with their emotions, and I was dealing with their thoughts and their questions, because there's all this stuff in us that we can't see, but boy, we can feel it, can't we? And that's our spiritual life. That's our spiritual journey, learning how to live well from that place of authenticness for who we are. Is a challenge. Part of that is the gifts and talents that we're given. And I'm just going to say this right now. Everybody has them, right? We're not limited to the ones that are listed out in the Bible. Everybody has gifts and talents. These gifts and talents are the things that you go to school for to be able to do them in your jobs, or that you train for to be able to work at them. Gifts and talents are the things we learn as we go, from the moment that a doctor places an infant in our hands and says, "Congratulations, it's up," right? And we're going, "Wow, it didn't come with a manual." Those are gifts, right? The gift of loving, the gift of care, the gift of attention. Like, these are all our gifts. And, as I was preparing for this service, I went online and I just typed into Google, thanks Google, spiritual gifts inventory. Do you know that there are, tons of spiritual gifts inventories? And do you know that some of them are like 35 questions, and some of them are like 8 pages, 12 pages, 24 pages, 32 pages? Whew. So I decided I wasn't going to give you a 32-page spiritual gifts inventory. So this is what I want to do. I want to share with you the shortest gifts inventory ever created. Are you ready? When I was in youth ministry, I went to a conference, and there was a fellow who spoke there. And he said to all of this, hundreds of youth leaders, what makes your bun scoot? And we all just he says, no, answer it. What makes your bun scoot? What are the things that when you think about it or talk about it or do it, it brings you to the edge of your seat and makes you bounce up and down? Those are your gifts, period. Some of us have had our gifts talked out of us by well-meaning people in our lives who thought, well, you're never going to make a living from that or whatever. Some of us have had our gifts celebrated. All of us have gifts. Sometimes in our lives we have to choose to grow a gift and not grow another. Well, and that's part of living in this world. Like, we have to make choices, right? Choices with our time, choices with our energy, choices with our abilities. How will we use them, right? And oftentimes the question is, how will I use them to support myself and my family? Which is a legitimate question, right? So, but there are also things that we just do for pleasure. And if you're somebody who's blessed enough to be able to be doing what you're most passionate about while you make a living, you are really, really, really lucky. I'm one of those people, right? I would do this for free. I'm glad I don't do it for free because I have two young people that I'm still, raising. But I like sharing my understanding, my spiritual journey, and helping other people explore it themselves. This is what I do. This is just who I am, because I remember what it was like to not have that, and I know what my life is like now having it. I don't care what you call it. I don't care what you call that loving presence. I call it God. I call it God because I say it a lot in services, and it would be overwhelming to have to say the unknowable mystery of the universe over and over. So I use God as a placeholder, right? I know people who call God Gus, meaning the guy upstairs. I had a friend who called God Bob. I have a friend who calls God Grace. I know so many people that have a different way of speaking God, and it doesn't matter. What matters is that in that exploration, what do I believe? Who do I believe in? We also get to, what does it matter? Who cares? How important is it? Well, for me, and for most believers, for most people of faith, I would say it's pretty darn important. Not because we want our gold star, right? Is anybody here for their gold star? Don't raise your hand. It's okay if you're here for a gold star. I was here for a long time in the church for a gold star. And a friend of mine finally gave me a box of them, But we're not here for a gold star. We're here for something else, something we maybe even can't put into words. But something happens when we gather for worship on Sunday morning, and we get quiet, and we get a little bit stirred up, and we maybe hear an invitation or a hug, a hug in words or whatever. So here we are, and these are important foundational things to the whole question of gifts, because where your heart is, right? There your time is. Where your heart is, there your talents are. Where your heart is, there it all is. And it's really easy for all of us to go in a different direction than we really actually want to go. So I would just invite you to remember that you have gifts, and that there's a reason we call them gifts, because they're given to you by, whatever way you understand, they were given to you to take and use to love the people around you, to help the people you come into contact with, and to make a difference in the world in which you live. Some of us may be using them as our job. Others may be using them, our gifts, as volunteers. Others may have gifts that we're not using. Mine is pottery. Haven't sat at a potter's wheel for way too many years. But when we do those things, the things that make our bun scoot, there is a different energy about us. Have you ever been to a performance or a concert or some kind of event where the person was doing what they were, like, it was so clear that this was their thing, right? And that person is up there and they're radiant. Like, you can't take your eyes off them because they're just full of an energy and an enthusiasm. That's what it's like to be using our gifts. When we use our gifts, when we follow that place in us that is who we authentically are, we automatically have that kind of energy and joy and hopefulness. It's not permanent, right? Like, it goes up and down. There are no guarantees, right, about being a Christian or about walking a journey of faith, except for that we're not alone. And that if we get going on a wrong direction, we can come back. And that if we get using our gifts and talents in ways that drain us, we can realize it and go, whoa, stop, right? So I would say if you're doing anything in your life that makes you go, ugh, that you need to stop and take a look at it. Now, sometimes we go through seasons in our life where the important relationships in our life sometimes feel like, so take a look at it because you can renew that. But what I'm talking about is the things we do, right? The activities we take on in the church, in the community, in our work. You are allowed to have a life of joyful productiveness. You know, Jesus said, I came so that they could have life and have it more abundantly. Abundant life is what we experience when we're celebrating our gifts, whether it's in our work or in our volunteer or in our family or in our friendships. We all have gifts. If you don't know what your gifts are, you can use the bun scoot method to figure it out, you know, and you can, or this is another good one, you can ask the people who know and love you, because oftentimes the people around us know what our gifts are better than we do, right? Because they see our bun scoot and they see us bounce up and down, and we might not know we're doing it because we're doing it, right? So that's another one. If you don't know what your gifts are, and you know, knitting can be a gift, crocheting can be a gift, like all of writing can be a gift, singing. My daughter's a gifted tattoo artist. These are all gifts, right? Gifts that we have, that we give, and there's just as many. The gift of hospitality, of baking, of cooking. There's just so many, right? The gifts of being able to read a legal document and know what it means. The gift of being able to look at a financial spreadsheet and understand what it's telling us. Those are gifts. The ability to unpack the tax forms and then put them back together in a way that matters, that's a gift. The gift of listening to people, of baking bannock for people or teaching people to bake bannock, the gifts of caring for our grandchildren and being with our children, like no limit, right? So, the bun scoot method, the ask someone you love method. If you're bewildered and you'd like to, make an appointment and come and talk to me, because we can talk about it. Or you can go online and pick one of the many spiritual gifts inventory. Now, I didn't go to those first, and there's a reason. Because oftentimes the language in those spiritual gifts inventory is pretty limited, right? And so if you do choose to go online and do a spiritual gifts inventory, take what you like and leave the rest. Understand it the way that makes sense to you, and don't try to feel like you're being coerced into someone else's belief system. But allow it to give you a new way to look at yourself. Because that's what we're called to do. We are each given, according to 1 Corinthians 12, we are each given the manifestations of the Spirit. Those would be our gifts, right? The manifestations of our inner truth. Those would be our gifts. The manifestations of our passions. Those would be our gifts. Each of us is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. It fills us with joy to be doing what we're gifted in, but it blesses the people around us. Now, I'm going to close with this. There is no place in a discussion about gifts, especially in the church, for false humility. There is no place for that. Because we are all called to shine. We're called to shine the way children do. And when we play small, we shut down our light. But we're not called to do that. We're called to shine, to let that light and energy come out. Did you see it in a 7-year-old who stood up here and talked about why she wanted to be part of the church? Yeah, that's the light. We all have it. We are called. We are called to make use of that light, to make our life better, but mostly to make the lives of the people around us better. And when we allow ourselves to shine, we empower other people to do that too. When we play small, the message we give others is it's not okay for you to shine. And that's not a message we want. We want to be giving people the message, you're great, I like who you are, shine for all you're worth. We want to be giving ourselves that message and each other that message. Because when we give our hearts to God and we give our time to God, the talents that we give to God will bless us and bless the people around us. And our lives will get a new depth and texture and meaning that we maybe haven't experienced before. So, what are your gifts? Where do you use them? And what ones need a little bit of a nudge? We'll spend some time in silent reflection, and Nathan will bring us back with music.